This fawn took me about 6 hours to complete, but I'm getting it down to 1 hour. So let's go ahead and get started. So the eye is really like the biggest focal point. So you want to get it as heavily detailed as much as possible. So you want to use a sharp pencil, and I like to use mostly the black color pencil to start out with. I always say don't start with the black color pencil, but when it comes to the eyes, you do want it to be very heavily saturated with all the colors that you're using. So starting with the outline, and then I'm working in a blend of different colors. So I'm using a little bit of some reds, a little bit of a green, which is like the raw umber colors, and the Caran d'Ache Luminance series. And then I'm going back over with the black color pencil just to really sharpen it up a little bit more and get rid of the tooth of the paper that's coming through. You can use light color pencils like a really pale blue over the top of the highlight. You always want to leave room for the highlight. And in the eye, there's always some sort of speckles or details. So you do want to work with that as best as possible. I know sometimes in small portraits it's a little bit harder to do that. Now working around the eye, that's usually the next step that I like to do, is work from the eye out and then kind of work left to right after I've done a little bit around the eye. It's just kind of a habit of mine at this point. You don't necessarily have to start with the eye, but I do like to do that because it just brings the portrait alive a little bit more. It just, to me, feels weird if you started working on one section without the eye being complete. So the first couple of layers, you want to use some sort of lighter colored pencil with light pressure and draw in the same direction as the fur that you see as best as possible. So let it curve, let it flow naturally. Even like the first couple of layers, you want it to be that way because you'll still see that direction of the color pencil that you used even after many layers. So just be mindful of that as you're going along. It also helps build a guide for you as you are building up those layers to have a good sense of direction already. You also can use a white colored pencil to burnish some of the surrounding area or a little bit into the details. What that does is it creates a nice waxy coating over what you've already drawn, flattens it out a little bit more. That way then you can use more colored pencils on top, and it kind of helps to, like I said, create that waxy coating so that you can apply a little bit more details. So you can do that. And then I also use something that's I will show you here later on, that's really helpful for blending. It's a blending solvent that I like to use. Actually, later on, I'm saying right now. So this is mineral spirit oil. It's odorless. You can get it online. And I use a paintbrush and I just paint over what I've already done. Usually I like to have a little bit more layers down, but it's pretty light coloring around the eye, so I just went ahead and did it. But you can already see a difference here. So it's made everything a little bit more smooth, a little bit more saturated. And then once you apply other color pencils afterwards, it makes it easier to apply more details. It kind of helps to create more sharper details, more sharper fur, and just a little bit more of like a saturated look as well. So you can apply that over, like, even if it's just a little bit wet, because yes, it'll dry off. So if you make a little mistake and it goes outside on the white paper, it will dry out, so you won't see that. But you can apply other color pencils. You don't necessarily have to wait for it to dry. Sometimes I'll wait a little bit longer, but you don't necessarily have to. So the surrounding area, you can see I'm using a variety of different colors. I'm using that pale blue color to create a sense of nice contrast between the warm tones and the cool tones. That actually really helps to make your portrait look more alive in 3D like when you have a contrast between the warm and cool tones. And cool tones are blues, greens, and purples. Warm tones are reds, orange, and yellow. So kind of, keep that in mind as you're working with your portrait. When you add more of a variety of colors to your drawing, the more alive your portrait will look, and just the more fun it is overall, because you're applying all sorts of different fun colors to go with it. So let's just follow along for a couple of minutes here, and I will be back with a few more helpful tips. Just watch me build up these layers and see what kind of color pencils I'm using to do so. Okay, so in this area underneath the ear, I'm applying a little bit heavier pressure because you can see that where the lighting is coming from is kind of more on the upper right hand side. So you can see that there's a shadow that's happening underneath the ear. So I'm using the same color pencils, I'm just applying heavier pressure to it, and then also creating a little bit more of a waxy coating with some of those lighter colors in and around it too. So it's really just a matter of building layers and trusting the process. Yes, it looks like a mess for most of the layers, but once you've gotten rid of that quote-unquote tooth of the paper, which is just the white specks that you see, once you've gotten rid of that by applying a lot of layers, also using that mineral spirit oil to blend, then you'll start to really see more of a complete portrait and you'll be a lot more satisfied in the long run. But it really is a matter of having patience, trusting the process, and also just figuring out what kind of techniques works best for you. Is it drawing with lighter pressure and lighter colored pencils to begin with? Is it drawing in the same direction? Is it using blending solvents to help you? I will say that with the blending solvent, you do have to have certain kind of paper for it to work. I highly suggest some sort of hot pressed watercolor paper. You can also use Bristol vellum paper. It's a mix between like a drawing paper and then a watercolor paper. So it can hold a lot of the layers, and it can hold that solvent really well, and it also holds the pigmentation. So I've had some paper where it wasn't holding the pigmentation of the portrait, and I actually had some clients complain about it. So that's how I found out that it was not a good idea to continue with that paper. So I definitely suggest, I'm using the Bristol Vellum 300 series. You can get that on Amazon as well, or your local art store, but I definitely suggest that. I dare to say, and I've talked about this before, it's more important to have the right kind of paper than it is to have the right kind of pencils. There's all sorts of higher quality or medium quality brand color pencils out there, but you're not going to have as good of an experience if your paper is not good enough. So if you're using drawing paper with high quality pencils, you're still going to end up being disappointed and frustrated over time because it's not working. It's not holding those layers. You need something that's going to hold all of those layers. So I would try the Bristol vellum paper. You can also use any sort of like hot pressed watercolor paper, something in the on the heavier side. So, you know, just don't get drawing paper, please. If you're starting out, please don't start out with drawing paper, because you're not going to end up being very happy with the results. I'm only saying that because of my own personal experience. I was quite disappointed with the results when I was using paper that I thought was the correct kind of paper to use, drawing paper. You think, oh, well, I'm drawing, so drawing paper should be it, right? No, definitely not right. You can also use pastel matte paper. It's very heavy on the bumps, the texture, but you can use it, and it also kind of helps with the saturation, so you don't necessarily have to overuse your pencils. But it is very hard for me to apply details with it. I haven't figured out how to work with the details all too much, but you can try it out yourself. It's a little bit more on the expensive side too, so I don't really like investing in that kind of paper. So moving on to the ear. Yes, I know we're already halfway in the ear, so but I've just been chit-chatting with you. The ear, same colors. You always want to stay consistent with the colors that you've picked from the beginning. Yeah, you can add some colors, but at least incorporate it into the other parts that you've already completed if you're going to add colors, just so it stays consistent. Now I'm leaving room for the white areas, and I'm trying to like draw that wave. That way it looks like it's kind of more fluffy texture going on. So how you kind of achieve that is by using a mixture of different gray colors while also leaving room for the white. You can use the white color pencil to also create some white little lines. Now you're not going to be able to get 100% white on top. That's just the way colored pencils are. So just be mindful of that. But it does help when you have the mineral spirit oil to apply that first and then use the white on top of that. It works a little bit better. I also like to use a little bit of some green tones, but this is a raw umber color. It's raw umber 50%, I believe, or 30%. But it has a nice green tone to it, and I like using those because that's really like the color that you see in a lot of different animals when you're looking at them in person, because it's the green that's being naturally reflected from the environment. So when you apply that green, it does make the portrait look a little bit more realistic, as if it was going to just jump out at you instead of just a simple drawing itself. So play around with those and see. The raw umber series in Caran d'Ache luminance, that's what I like to use a lot, and you can get lighter or darker depending on the percentage that you have. So moving on to the forehead, it's very heavily saturated with orange tones and red tones, so that's what I am applying here. And if you look in the reference image, which is linked in the description below, if you didn't know it was there, sorry it's so late into this that I'm telling you that, but reference image, it's just really dark and heavily saturated in the forehead area, and because of the way the lighting is, there's a lot more warm tones than there normally would be in a fawn. This is a white-tailed deer fawn, but I just wanted to work with the same colors just because I thought it really turned out very like fantasy-like, just very pretty the way the colors were in this portrait. So that's what I'm working with here. And I do use like a little bit of a darker pink color. It's kind of like a rosy pink. I like using, as you can tell, I like using a variety of different colors and playing around with colors too. So I was using that, just more of a blending in some of the undertones than anything else. But in this area, it's going to be pretty heavily saturated. So just, you know, work with what you've got. Try not to apply too many dark, heavy layers too soon. You want to build up with light layers first, that way you don't ruin the paper and then you cannot add details afterwards. It looks very flat if you work with heavy pressure first. So just keep watching me build up the layers here. I will go back over this area later on just to make some adjustments. You can do the same thing. If you completed a section, moved on, and you think, okay, I need to make some adjustments and go back over it, just like what I'm doing here with the purple, you can do that. This was kind of a risk for me. I've done some purple, I've added some purple before, but not like this. I think it turned out pretty interesting, to say the least. Yes, I make some adjustments to blend it in more, but you can kind of already see, like, it made a pretty big difference. It almost made it look like, you know, some of the areas that's where the light is not hitting as much in the white parts, kind of makes it look like, okay, that's some like undertone colors that, you know, what's the coloring that's happening underneath those layers, and it's bringing out some of those cool tones because of that. Alright, so it's time to add the dark sepia. It's my favorite color pencil. Okay, I use black too, but I also use the dark sepia. I blend those two a little bit together for a lot of my portraits, but I'm using the black just in that right underneath the ear to really saturate it, make it like pop out, because that's what it looks like in the portrait. And then I'm using the dark sepia to create a sense of depth for the parts on like the top of the head and then on the side as well. Okay, so the ear is pretty much like the same kind of techniques. It's very basic, so just follow along and you'll see what I mean by that. It's just creating a sense of like depth by looking at the lighting, where the direction of the lighting is coming from. So just keep following along and you'll see. Okay, let's move on to the mouth and chin area. So it's mostly white, so we're going to use a little bit of some gray tones. We're going to use a little bit of some like lighter sepia colors as well, which kind of creates this purple hue. And then of course blending in some of the orange tones in there, but a lot of it is more spread out. That way you can still leave room for the white in there. And right here is actually a really good example of not using a sharp pencil. You do want to have sharp pencils for some things, especially for details, but you don't necessarily have to have a sharp color pencil for the first couple of layers. It's more about kind of getting in that blending technique first, and then as you start to add the details, then you can sharpen your pencil a little bit more. Once you've got a couple of layers down, you can use the mineral spirit oil to blend what you have together, and you can actually see a big difference between not using the oil and using the oil. So I definitely highly suggest investing in that if you are wanting to build up a lot of layers and making it look more realistic while saving more on your color pencils, because it really does help to not have to use color pencils nearly as much as, you know, adding hundreds of layers all together. And then for the nose, there's a lot of black and gray in there, but I am going to use a mixture of other colors like blue, like a blue-gray, some purple tones in there. So you'll see the first 5 or 6 layers are going to look very off and not correct. And to me, I definitely struggled with the mouth area just because it looked very weird. But I just went by kind of like just the visuals and instinct at that point. I trusted the process more than anything else that way. You know, I didn't lose faith in the end results ultimately. So just keep watching and you'll see what I mean by building up those layers. It just really took a lot of layers to make it look realistic. If it looks too dark, you can lighten it up using just some lighter colors, especially after using the mineral spirit oil, because that oil does allow a little bit more room for error, because you can blend a little bit better and remove a little bit better too. Not necessarily the first couple of layers, but the layers after you've used it. So just keep that in mind too if you're going to use that. But as you can see, like what I said earlier, I used a blend of grays, blues, and a little bit of those lighter sepia colors. I really like to incorporate those purple tones in a lot of my portraits, like purple and green, just because it really adds a nice unique touch to the portrait itself, and I think it kind of makes it stand out and look a little bit more realistic ultimately. Now I am using some blonde tones in there just to kind of add a little bit more contrast and just really like I need some different colors going on. I need something that's a little bit more blonde, a little bit more purple in there. So that's what I'm doing. It's adding a little bit more vibrancy to that area. That way it doesn't look so flat. That little tool that you saw is actually an electric eraser. It's got a little tiny eraser at the end and it spins it around really fast. That's what I use to erase some details. So if you see that, you'll see how it works. It doesn't necessarily erase everything, but it does help to alleviate or lighten up some areas. That way the highlighted feature is a little bit more prominent. You can also use the white color pencil to burnish a little bit and then add a good sense of highlight in there, especially if you want it to be more blended than something that's like a really sharp feature that you can use with the eraser. The eraser is a little bit more of a sharper feature and the white is just a little bit more of a softer highlight. Now moving on to the arm. It's folded underneath, so his or her, probably a her, she, her arm is tucked underneath, so you can see the direction of the fur is curving in. So that's just really like, you really want to enhance that feature as much as possible. So leave room for some of the white a little bit and then just kind of work your way into it using different colors while also focusing on, okay, where's the direction of the lighting coming from? So there is a little bit more of a highlighted feature where you can see there's a little bit of a shine to it. So you want to not work so much in that area and then darken the areas that are clearly more shaded or shadowed, like in between, you know, underneath the arm and then underneath the head too. Those two are the darkest features. So keep that in mind as you are building up these layers. After the mineral spirit oil, I like to use some sort of highlight if it's a little bit too saturated. So I'm using the raw umber 10%, which is a nice warm gray tone, you could say, or just more of a beige tone in general. That way it doesn't, cool it down too much. It keeps that warm tone, but it does tone down the bright orange in there. And then to add a little bit of contrast, I'm using a dark gray, so it has that cool gray tone in there. That's really helpful to have that nice contrast between the cool tones and the warm tones. So if you are going to do any portraits, I highly suggest working with warm tones and cool tones all together. It really does help to create a more realistic look overall. Now to the other arm, it's a lot lighter, so we're gonna leave a lot more room for the white features as much as possible. So I'm using that raw umber color and then blending a variety of different browns in there. And I'm trying to draw in the direction of the fur as best as possible, so it's pretty obvious the direction of the fur really for most of this portrait. I'd say the only time that it's really hard to find the direction is if it's a super dark area, like, a black dog or black bear or something. It's a lot harder to find the direction of the fur, but for this fawn, it was actually pretty easy. But the one thing that is a little bit difficult about drawing in lighter areas is trying to get it looking well blended without darkening it too much. So that's why I like to use a white color pencil or just a pale blue or pale pink to burnish in that area. That way it does lighten it up. So you can see with the mineral spirit oil, it darkened it up, and then I'm going in with the white to lighten it up a little bit more. So it does help to, using that spirit oil is it really helps to blend, but then it also helps like for the rest of the layers too, because you can add a lot more details without that tooth of the paper coming through. So I really do highly suggest it. You can look on Amazon to purchase it. That's where I got mine, but you can also look at your local art store too. It's usually in the charcoal section. Okay, so let's move on to the body here. And this was the most difficult section because there were so many white areas, like little tufts of white fur coming through. I did a really light trace beforehand, as you can see, just so I could get a good understanding as to where each section really is, and then I freehand drew the rest of it. left room for those white areas. So that's why it took a while too, was, you had to work around those areas, which, in a lot of portraits, you don't necessarily have to work around that much detail. But the first couple of layers, you can use darker colors in the areas that are going to be darker, such as the top part. And then going towards the middle is a little bit lighter, but then the rest of it gets dark. So as you can see in the reference image, what I mean by that. So you definitely need to focus on where's the lighting coming from and work your way from there. I don't always like using really dark colors for the first couple of layers, but I'm trying to get to a little bit more of a position where I can use the mineral spirit oil and really heavily saturate it. So I am using a little bit heavier pressure with darker colors, not a whole lot of heavy pressure because I still want to leave enough room to be able to build layers, because if you apply too much heavy pressure to begin with, you're going to ruin that paper and you won't be able to add much detail. If you're worried about not getting the proportions right, or not looking realistic, that is okay. Just do your best to build up those layers and do your best to make it look as proportionally accurate as possible. I know it's difficult when you aren't as experienced in drawing, so you've only been doing it for less than a year or something, but if you just trust the process and keep going along, keep practicing, I'm telling you, it'll become like second nature to really understand proportions and how they work, and then getting it to look realistic too. So you have to kind of figure out the best methods to use with color pencils and understand how they actually layer together, because it is very different than watercolor or acrylic or oil. You definitely have to work with light colors and light pressure to build up those layers, and also to be able to see all of those layers together, because you're blending it on the paper instead of blending on a paint palette, if you know what I mean. So it's a lot of trusting the process and also learning to be patient and enjoying the whole experience itself, not necessarily trying to achieve a certain goal, but just learning to enjoy the moment and enjoy the process of drawing itself and blending. And what I'll do is I'll use a podcast or an audiobook or just some relaxing music to help me keep going, so I can sit down for longer periods of time and draw. That way I can really start to develop a little bit more of a sense of, okay, how do these pencils work, and also get some good headway on the one section at a time, because it's a lot more satisfying and more motivating if you can complete one section at a time instead of working in big chunks and then not completing it nearly as much. You'll be a lot more satisfied in the long run if you do finish one section at a time. Just trust me on that one. That's coming from experience. Okay, so just keep following along here and you'll see what kind of methods I use. I don't sharpen my pencil right away, and I'm really just trying to get the colors down first before adding any of the details. But you definitely want to draw in the direction of the fur, and I know some areas it's a little bit harder to see that direction, but like I said, trust the process and do your best to make it look, as realistic as possible and layer it up too. So use lighter pressure first and then work with the direction of the fur, but just be mindful of it's going to look messy for a while until it's completely done. I mean, even when it's done, it still looks like it's a mess, but when you take a step back from that, you'll see that it actually looks pretty good and it's not as messy as you'd think. So just be positive about your experience and your steps that you have to take, and find something that helps distract you from, being too negative about your work. If you've made it this far, congrats. I know it's a long process, but like I said, you gotta trust it. You gotta learn to enjoy every single step that you take with colored pencils, and eventually this will be your method of like meditation in a way, where it's very, very calming. Because in the beginning, when I first started drawing, it was not calming. It was really frustrating. I was really like upset that I wasn't understanding the right techniques, and it just wasn't working out the way I wanted it to. But then as I learned through trial and error over, I'd say, a good year's time, I then started to really understand and grasp, okay, so first of all, it's the materials I'm using. I need to have better materials. Second of all, it's the techniques that I'm using too. I need to draw lighter first with lighter pressure and have patience to build up those layers, or it's just not going to turn out right, and it's going to look really unrealistic and really ugly. So yeah, you definitely have to have the patience and devotion to building up the layers and trusting the process and completely finishing the portrait itself, and not just moving on to another piece after halfway doing it. There's not a single portrait. Okay, I lied. There's one portrait that I only halfway did and did not finish, and that is of a, oh gosh, like a 20 by 26 portrait of a chicken, only because it was so giant and the paper was not giving me enough leeway. But once I figured out the materials that I liked the most, with the methods that I like the most, and the blending solvents that I like to use the most, then it became way easier, and it was almost like just second nature to me at that point. And then I could relax into it and not be so stressed out as I'm drawing. So I hope that you get to that point too. I want to create a platform that everybody that watches the videos and are interested in learning to draw starts to fall in love with the process itself and falls in love with the results and just everything. You know, I want them to experience what I've experienced with it. So let's just keep watching here, and you know, if you're trying to do your own portrait, you can follow along, or if you're just watching just to see the process, go ahead and just follow along. But you'll see how it really starts to come together as you build up, or as I build up more and more layers. So we've gotten pretty far so far, and I'm using a lot of the same colors, pretty much all the same colors as the beginning, but I do incorporate a little bit of some more richer hot pink colors in there and some lighter peach colors, mostly in some of these areas that are just, they need like a good mid-tone color in there, just to add a good sense of depth and like a difference between the leg and the back, because you can see this leg is the fawn is tucking into the back leg here, so I want it to pop out as much as possible, and by doing so is using a variety of different colors, which I'm always talking about. I think it's really important to have no less than 5 color pencils in a portrait. For this one, I probably had about like 15 of them. And so what I'll do is in my left hand, I have almost all of those, and I'm holding in my left hand, and I swap them back and forth. That's how I'm able to go pretty fast. I don't just like take a pencil, use it, set it down, pick up another one. No, I am swapping them back and forth in my left hand. That way I can be more efficient when I'm drawing, and I'm focusing more on the portrait than having to turn or whatever to go pick up the other pencil. So this other tool that you're seeing here is called a slice tool, and I mean that's exactly what it's doing. It's slicing away at the layers, and you can see it's creating these little random tufts of fur. So it's kind of nice to use for stray hairs here and there, and it adds a really nice sense of realism to the portrait, because pretty much in all hair there's going to be some stray hairs here and there. So I think it's a really great tool to use. I don't always use it just because not all animals have that, and sometimes you want the hair to be a little bit more smooth instead of more detailed with the sketch look, which the stray hairs have that kind of like highlighted look. I hope this video has been helpful, and if you're interested in learning to draw and want to take a step further, I do have some online classes that you can take on my website. It's Pick Your Own Animal, and then you just download the instructions and follow along. It's play or pause at your own leisure. They're pre-recorded, It's very similar setup to this, but I tell you exactly what color pencils I'm using. I'm telling you the methods and why I'm using those pencils, and pretty much just goes into more depth than something like this. But they have been very helpful for a lot of my students, and the one thing that they really appreciate is how much time I've invested in explaining the process, as well as showing like what color pencils I'm using. So in something like this on my YouTube channel, I don't go into depth on the color pencils I'm using and many more things. So if you're interested, you can go to the links below in the description, click on the link, learn to draw or take a class, or you can go to my website and just click on Learn to Draw and it'll be available there. If you want to take a step further, I do have 8-week program. It's very in-depth on drawing different types of fur, like different textured fur, specifically different colored fur, and then I also go into the different features of an animal, so the eyes, ears, mouth, and nose. Those are all really important features to understand, so I go into depth in those. And then the second to last week, you follow along the full pet portrait tutorial, so that by the very last week, you draw your own pet portrait. And yes, you can ask me questions along the way, but I also evaluate your progress along the way and by the end as well. So if you want to check that out, that's on my website. Go to Learn to Draw and then go to the drop down where it says 8-week program. It's really good for pet portraits, but it's also really good for wildlife too. But as we're nearing the end, the next couple of minutes, just sit and relax and watch the rest of the process here. We're almost complete, and I really hope that you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.